I married 𝐃𝐄𝐒𝐒 believing I'd found my place in the world. 1 year later, I understood the truth. I hadn't gained a home. I'd walked into a gilded cage where I ranked somewhere below the houseplants in importance, and significantly below his mother. Derek was a mama's boy of the purest, most undiluted strain. His life philosophy could be summed up in 4 words: my mother is always right. His phone wallpaper was a solo portrait of Linda, soft-focused and beaming. He'd misplace his wedding ring without a second thought, but the hand-knitted scarf she'd given him, that he folded with the precision of a military cadet handling a flag. If Linda remarked, "Emma doesn't know how to run a household," he'd recite it to me like scripture for a solid week. If she frowned, he'd spring out of bed at midnight to rub her shoulders, his face tight with anxiety. And Linda, 63 years old, widow's peak sharp as a blade, had elevated petty theft to an art form. Not grand larceny. Nothing you could call the police about. Just the small, grimy violations that fester under your skin like a splinter you can't dig out. At the supermarket, she'd strip every loose outer leaf from the cabbages, then sneak a fistful of scallions into the bag at the scale. Borrow a cup of soy sauce from a neighbor and never return it. If you knocked on her door to ask, she'd tell the entire building you were stingy. Her proudest talent, the one she'd spent a lifetime perfecting, was extracting maximum gain from minimum investment. And her most successful venture, her masterpiece, was Derek. She'd molded him into a son who obeyed without question, a shield she could wield against any accusation, any consequence. When I first married into this family, I genuinely tried. I wanted to love her as my own mother. My first paycheck after the wedding, I bought her a cashmere coat that cost me 2 weeks' salary. She took it between her fingers, rubbed the fabric, and said, without a trace of irony, "Nice material. Pity about the color. Too young for me. I'll have it dyed." A pause. "Which mall did you buy this at? Next time, take me with you. I'll help you pick. Your taste needs work." I never bought her another thing. But that didn't stop her from taking. Linda had a key to our apartment, handed to her by Derek with the ceremonial gravity of a king bestowing a scepter. She came and went as she pleased, no knocking, no warning. I'd come home from work and find her standing in my bedroom, my closet doors gaping open, her hands rifling through my clothes. "Emma, this dress is nice fabric. Must have cost a fortune. TSK, young people, no sense of money. You'll bankrupt my son. Emma, I saw a takeout container in your trash. Not cooking again. My Derek has a delicate stomach. He can't eat that filthy outside food. Or are you just too lazy to take care of him properly? Emma, look at all these bottles on your vanity. Such a mess. Let me help you organize." She'd say this while unscrewing the cap of my serum, the one I'd agonized over buying, the one that cost me half a month's rent, and pumping a fat, wasteful glob onto the back of her hand. She'd rub it in with rough, calloused palms, making little tootang sounds. All this money for such a tiny bottle. Highway robbery. Doesn't even smell special. My cold cream works better. That serum was a week old. She'd siphoned off a third of it. I stood in the doorway, watching her paw through my things, clicking open my lipsticks to inspect the colors, spritzing my perfume into the air like she was testing room spray. A feeling crawled up my throat, thick and suffocating, like swallowing a live fly. But whenever I tried to push back, Derek materialized at my elbow with that expression, the one that said I was being unreasonable, hysterical, difficult. "Babe, she means well. Is it really that big a deal? Keep your voice down, she'll hear you. She's elderly, she can't handle stress." I remember one evening, standing in the kitchen, my hands braced against the counter, trying to breathe through the rage. Derek, your mother goes through my things every time she's here. She opens my drawers, my closet, my nightstand. That's not normal. His face shuddered instantly. There you go again. She's just tidying up. Didn't your own mother ever clean your room? Why is it a crime when mine does it? It's not about cleaning. It's about privacy. My underwear drawer, Derek. She goes through my underwear drawer. A family doesn't need privacy from each other. His voice rose, righteous and booming, a shield of noise. You just don't like her. She's been nothing but good to you, and you pick at every little thing. Your heart is the size of a pinprick, you know that. Linda, standing in the hallway behind him, wiped her hands on a dish towel with an expression of wounded dignity that was also, somehow, triumph. See? My son chooses me. We had this fight 100 times. 100 variations on the same theme. I was always the outsider, the interloper, the one who needed to bend. Every argument ended the same way, me swallowing my words until they formed a cold, hard knot in my chest, and Derek striding away convinced of his own righteousness. In that house, I was never the lady of the manor. I was an uninvited guest who'd overstayed her welcome, subject to inspection, evaluation, and quiet confiscation. The real mistress had a key. She came and went as she pleased, and nothing, not my drawers, not my dignity, not my sanity, was off limits. The vanishing began so quietly I almost didn't notice. The first time, I thought I'd simply misplaced it. A black lace thong, a wedding gift from my best friend. I searched the laundry basket, shook out the bedsheets, even checked behind the washer. Nothing. I figured it had slipped behind a drawer or gotten tangled in Derek's clothes, and I let it go. The second time, I blamed the wind. Our balcony was semi-enclosed, with a clothesline I used for delicates. Maybe a gust had plucked it from the line and sent it spiraling down to the street below. I even went downstairs and scanned the bushes, feeling faintly ridiculous. But by the third and fourth disappearance, silk, both of them, new, the kind of things I bought for myself to feel good in my own skin, the unease settled in like a slow poison. I tore the apartment apart. I emptied every drawer, checked behind every piece of furniture, even crawled under the bed with a flashlight. The panties had vanished. Not misplaced. Not blown away. Erased. A cold thought, slick and unwelcome as a snake, coiled at the base of my spine. Only one other person had unrestricted access to my bedroom. The woman with the key. The woman who never knocked. Once the idea lodged in my brain, it grew roots. I started replaying old memories, moments I dismissed as quirks or generational differences, and saw them in a new and uglier light. The way Linda lingered over my lingerie drawer when she tidied. How she'd hold up a new purchase, silk, lace, something delicate, between thumb and forefinger, examining it with a strange, hungry focus. "What do you need such fancy things for?" she'd ask, her lip curling. "Who are you trying to impress?" My generation, we wore cotton. Practical. Modest. These scraps of nothing, they're indecent. The scraps of nothing weren't cheap. I'd bought them on sale, but they were still $30, $40 a piece. I was wearing them for myself. Was that so hard to understand? A married woman dressing like this, she'd mutter, almost to herself. "It's not proper. Your mind should be on your husband, your home. Not on frivolous things." At the time, I thought she was just being her usual judgmental self. Now, looking back, I recognized the glint in her eye. Not disapproval. Hunger. The kind of avarice that isn't about money, what's a used pair of panties worth, but about something deeper and more disturbing. A 60-something-year-old woman stealing her daughter-in-law's underwear. It sounded like the plot of a trashy soap opera. But nothing else made sense. I couldn't confront Linda directly. I knew her too well. She'd explode, weep, wail about her honor and her spotless reputation. God, how she loved that word, and within an hour the entire apartment complex would know that her ungrateful daughter-in-law had accused her of something unspeakable. I'd be the villain. I was always the villain. So I decided to start with Derek. Cautiously. Gently. A test. That night, he was sprawled on the bed, scrolling through short videos, his face lit blue by the screen. He snorted at something, thumb flicking up. I sat on the edge of the mattress and waited until the timing felt right. Hey, babe. I've lost a few pairs of underwear. Like, multiple. They're just gone. I've looked everywhere. He didn't glance up. You probably just forgot where you put them. You're always losing stuff. Check the back of the closet. I did. I checked everywhere. They're not there. I inched closer, keeping my voice light, almost casual. You don't think, maybe your mom, when she's helping clean, maybe she accidentally threw them out? Or, got them mixed up with her own laundry? I paused, then added delicately, I mean, she's so meticulous about hygiene. But with intimate items, it's important to be careful about cross-contamination. Maybe you could just mention it to her. Casually. The change was instant. The smile wiped off his face like someone had taken an eraser to it. His thumb froze mid-scroll. He turned his head slowly, and his eyes, the eyes of the man I'd married, the man I'd thought would protect me, were hard and cold as river stones. What exactly are you implying? His voice was low, dangerous. You think my mother stole your panties? No, I just thought maybe. That's exactly what you're saying. I knew it. I knew you had a problem with her. He was on his feet now, the phone clattering onto the nightstand, his face flooding with color. She cooks for you, she cleans for you, she nursed you when you had the flu last winter, and this is how you repay her. By accusing her of being some kind of pervert. Derek, I'm just asking. Your mind is sick, you know that. Sick. My mother is the most decent, upright woman I know. She'd never touch your trashy little underwear. What, you think your panties are made of gold? You think she's jealous of your cheap lingerie? Every word hit like a slap. I sat frozen, my hands clenched in my lap, while he loomed over me, his finger jabbing the air. She raised me by herself. Do you have any idea what she sacrificed? How much she suffered? And you sit there, in the home she helped us build, and spit on her name. You should be ashamed. I felt something crack inside me, deep and clean. A bone breaking. No. Something more essential. The last thread of hope I'd been clinging to. My eyes were burning, but I forced the tears back. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction. You're right, I said. My voice came out flat and calm, so disconnected from the storm inside me that it sounded like someone else speaking. I'm wrong. I'm paranoid. I'm a terrible person for even thinking it. Your mother is a saint. Derek blinked, thrown off by the sudden surrender. Then his shoulders relaxed, and a smug, satisfied expression settled over his face. Good. I'm glad you're seeing sense. Don't let me hear you talk about her like that again. He picked up his phone, lay back down, and resumed scrolling. Within seconds, he chuckled at something on the screen. The conflict was over. He'd won. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, my hands folded over my stomach like a corpse at a wake. And I made a decision. Reason was useless. Mercy was wasted. The only thing these people would understand was pain, their own pain, served cold and undetectable, with no one to blame but themselves. From that day on, I stopped fighting. I smiled when Linda rifled through my things. I thanked her when she organized my closet. I laughed off her little digs about my spending, my cooking, my body, my worth as a wife. If she wanted to believe she'd broken me, let her. Meanwhile, I bought a miniature camera, small as a button, and tucked it into the eye of a stuffed animal on my dresser, angled toward the closet. The footage fed to a hidden app on my phone, clear enough to capture a mosquito mid-flight. I also started planning my trap. It needed to hurt. It needed to be untraceable. And it needed to be something she'd bring upon herself. The answer, when it came, was absurdly simple: peaches. That weekend, I lugged home a crate of them, 20 pounds of blush pink perfection, each one round as a fist and covered in a fine, velvety fuzz. My coworker's family runs an orchard, I lied cheerfully. They had a bumper crop, so we all pitched in to buy some. Practically free. Linda's eyes lit up at the word free. Well, that's more like it. At least you're learning some thrift. She selected the two largest and cradled them like jewels. These will make a nice cobbler. Take as many as you want, Mom. I beamed. I bought extra just for you. Derek, passing through the kitchen, clapped me on the shoulder with the magnanimous air of a king acknowledging a peasant who'd finally learned to curtsy. See? This is nice. This is how family should be. I smiled up at him, sweet as syrup. You're so right. That night, after they'd both gone to bed, I locked myself in the kitchen. The only light came from the hood over the stove, a dim yellow glow that threw long shadows across the counters. I laid out my tools, a paring knife, a sheet of wax paper, a pair of tweezers, and 10 pounds of peaches. Then I began. Peach fuzz is nearly invisible, each filament finer than a human hair, delicate as spider silk. But when it touches skin, especially the thin, sensitive skin of the inner thighs and groin, it becomes a torture device. The microscopic barbs lodge in the pores, releasing a maddening, escalating itch that no amount of scratching can satisfy. You scratch until you bleed. You bleed and you keep scratching. And because the fibers are too fine to see, even a doctor can't identify the cause. Contact dermatitis, they'll say. Allergic reaction. Here's some cortisone cream, good luck. Untraceable. Unprovable. Perfect. I worked for hours. The knife blade whispered against the fruit, shearing off the fuzz and gossamer drifts that I collected on the wax paper. My fingers cramped. My eyes burned from the dim light. Sweat trickled down my spine, and the air grew thick with the sweet, cloying scent of bruised fruit. Every few minutes, I'd pause to flex my hands, then bend back to the task. By 2 a.m, I had accumulated a small mountain of pale fluff, maybe a teaspoon's worth, but enough. It looked like dust, or powdered sugar, or nothing at all. I went to the bedroom and retrieved a brand new silk thong from the back of my drawer. I'd bought it specifically for this purpose, elegant, expensive looking, exactly the kind of thing Linda's greedy fingers couldn't resist. In the bathroom, I filled a basin with cool water, sprinkled in my harvest of peach fuzz, and submerged the panties. The water shimmered faintly, the invisible barbs saturating every fiber of the silk. I left it to steep for 3 hours, then hung it to dry in the darkest corner of the balcony, concealed between a white t-shirt and an old towel. Invisible unless you were looking for it. Impossible to miss if you were. The next morning, I lingered over breakfast. I checked my bag 3 times, retied my shoelaces twice, ran back for a forgotten phone. All the while, I watched Linda from the corner of my eye. She was pretending to watch the morning news, but her gaze kept drifting toward the balcony, toward that shadowed corner where the silk hung like bait. I felt a cold, electric thrill run down my spine. She'd seen it. The hook was set. At the office, I sat at my desk and stared at spreadsheets without reading a single number. My heart was a steady drumbeat of anticipation. Take it, I thought. Please, take it. Chloe, my coworker, leaned over my cubicle wall. You're glowing today. Good weekend. Something like that. I smiled, and for the first time in months, it felt real. I raced home that evening, my pulse hammering in my throat. The apartment smelled of garlic and ginger. Linda was cooking, playing the devoted grandmother figure she performed so well. She poked her head out of the kitchen when she heard the door. Dinner's almost ready. Go wash up. I studied her as she spoke. The way she shifted her weight from foot to foot. The slight, almost imperceptible hitch in her stride. The way her thighs pressed together, as if she was holding something in place. My eyes went to the balcony. The corner of the clothesline was empty. Something bloomed in my chest, a dark, savage flower of satisfaction. Got you. I locked myself in the bedroom and pulled up the camera footage on my laptop, my fingers trembling. I scrubbed to mid-morning and hit play. There she was. Linda entered the frame at 10:17 a.m., her movements brisk and purposeful. She paused at the living room window, scanning the parking lot below for my car, then for Derek's. Satisfied we were both gone, she deadbolted the front door and made a beeline for the balcony. She didn't hesitate. She didn't browse. She walked directly to the corner of the clothesline, reached up, and unpinned the silk thong. She held it up to the light, turning it this way and that, and I saw her face clearly for the first time. Greed. Pure, undisguised greed, the look of a collector who'd spotted a rare specimen. Then she did something that made my stomach lurch. She lifted the panties to her nose and inhaled. Her eyes fluttered closed, a faint, repulsive smile tugging at her lips. She held the breath for a long moment, as if savoring a fine wine, then exhaled slowly. They were brand new. Straight from the package. They smelled of nothing but fabric. And yet there she stood, sniffing them like a sommelier over a cork. I gagged, clapping a hand over my mouth. After she finished her inspection, she folded the panties into a neat square, tucked them into the pocket of her housecoat, and patted them flat. Then, instead of leaving, she took a slow turn around my bedroom. She opened my closet, flipped through my dresses, held one up against herself in the mirror. She unscrewed a new lipstick, swatched it on the back of her hand, frowned at the color. She spritzed my perfume into the air and walked through the mist. At the door, she paused. She lifted a delicate gold chain from my jewelry box, held it to the light, considered it. Then, with a tiny shake of her head, asterisk too subtle, no one will notice asterisk, she put it back and walked out. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark for a long time. The last shred of my restraint had dissolved. There would be no mercy now. Dinner was a symphony of suffering. Linda couldn't sit still. She squirmed on her chair, shifting her weight from left cheek to right, crossing and uncrossing her legs under the table. Her face was flushed, a fine sheen of sweat glazing her forehead. Every few seconds, her hand would creep below the table edge, and I'd hear the faint, frantic sound of nails scraping fabric. "Mom, you okay?" Derek glanced up from his plate, brow furrowed. "You're all red." "Fine. I'm fine." Her voice was strained, a half-octave too high. "Just hot. The weather's been so muggy lately. And I walked a lot today. My legs are sore." "I'll get you some of those pain relief patches," Derek said, already reaching for his phone. "The good ones from the Japanese market." "No need. I said I'm fine." She practically barked the words, then caught herself and forced a smile that looked more like a grimace. "Just tired. Old bones." I kept my head down, pushing rice around my plate, hiding the smile that kept threatening to break through. Hot. Sore. That itch wasn't in her legs. It was spreading, burrowing, igniting nerve endings in places she couldn't scratch in polite company. And it was only going to get worse. Halfway through the meal, she lost the battle. Her hand plunged below the table and she scrubbed furiously at her inner thigh, her whole body tensing with the effort. The chair legs squeaked against the tile. A piece of pork slipped from her chopsticks and landed in her lap. I'm done." She lurched to her feet, keeping her legs clamped tightly together. "I'm not very hungry. You two finish." She waddled toward her room, her gait a strange, bow-legged shuffle, as if she were trying to carry an egg between her knees without breaking it. The door slammed. The lock clicked. Derek stared after her. "What's with her? Maybe menopause?" I suggested innocently. "Hormonal fluctuations can cause hot flashes, mood swings, skin sensitivity." "Ha. Yeah, probably." He nodded sagely, as if I'd just delivered a medical diagnosis, and went back to his dinner. I chewed a piece of broccoli, savoring the crunch. That was the opening act. The real show began when I took out the trash. The stairwell light was out, leaving the corridor in murky shadow. As I reached the ground floor, I saw a figure struggling up the steps, bent, slow, moving with the pained deliberation of an injured animal. Walter Pearson. The retired widower from the apartment below ours. He was a fixture of the building, always in the lobby with a crossword puzzle, always ready with a compliment about the weather or the azaleas in the courtyard. "What a lovely lady your mother-in-law is," he told me once, his eyes tracking Linda across the parking lot. Asterisk such poise. Such elegance for her age, asterisk. There was nothing elegant about him now. He was doubled over, one hand death-gripping the railing, the other planted on his knee. He hauled himself up one step at a time, pausing after each to gasp through clenched teeth. His legs were splayed wide, his gait a grotesque waddle, as though the simple act of bringing his thighs together was an agony beyond bearing. And his hand kept darting to his crotch. He'd grope, scratch frantically for a few seconds, then wrench his arm away as if burned. Then, a few steps later, the hand would creep back. Scratch, scratch, scratch. His face was a mask of torment, twisted between relief and despair. The exact same symptoms. The exact same walk. I froze, the trash bag slipping from my fingers and hitting the concrete with a soft thud. No. No, it couldn't be. My mind raced, connecting dots I hadn't even known existed. The peach-fuzz had only one vector, the silk panties. The panties I'd left as bait. The panties Linda had stolen. Walter's symptoms meant one thing and one thing only. The panties, after Linda took them, had ended up on Walter's body. I stood there in the dark stairwell, the realization crashing over me in waves. My mother-in-law and the downstairs widower. Linda, who lectured me about decency and modesty. Linda, who clutched her pearls at the sight of my lingerie. Linda, who'd called me a whore for wearing a sundress without a cardigan. She was sleeping with the neighbor. Walter sensed me watching. He turned, and our eyes met for one excruciating second. His face, already flushed and sweating, drained of color. He looked like a man who'd seen a ghost. Or been caught by one. He didn't speak. He just scrambled up the remaining stairs with a burst of frantic energy, his tortured waddle becoming almost comical in its urgency. I picked up the trash bag, my hand steady even as my mind reeled. The disgust I felt was so total, so overwhelming, that it circled back around to something like calm. I'd set a trap for a thief. What I'd caught was so much bigger. Fine. I could work with this. The next few days were a masterclass in silent warfare. Linda's condition deteriorated spectacularly. Her face erupted in red, angry patches that no amount of foundation could hide. Her neck and forearms were cross-hatched with scratch marks, some fresh and weeping, others crusted with dried blood. She stopped leaving the apartment entirely. No more morning tai chi in the courtyard, no more coffee clatches with the building's gossip brigade. She barricaded herself in her room, emerging only for meals, and even then she'd bolt down a few bites before fleeing back to her sanctuary. At the dinner table, she was a wreck. Her chopsticks trembled. Her legs churned under the table, knees knocking against the wood. Her free hand was in constant, furtive motion, scratching a hip, raking at a forearm, burrowing under her waistband. She looked like a woman possessed by a swarm of invisible fire ants. Derek, in his infinite obliviousness, diagnosed her with allergies and bought her antihistamines. She swallowed them by the handful. They did nothing, of course, but she couldn't explain why without incriminating herself. It was a beautiful, airtight trap. Meanwhile, Walter Pearson had vanished from public life. His curtains stayed drawn. His mail piled up in the lobby. His children, who lived out of state, started calling the building manager, demanding wellness checks. I heard through the grapevine, by which I mean the property manager, who was a terrible gossip, that Walter's son had flown in and screamed at him for hours. "What have you been doing, Dad? What kind of filth have you gotten into? The doctor says it looks like chemical burns." If only they knew. But Linda, as I was learning, was not the type to suffer quietly. She was a cornered animal, and cornered animals bite. Her preferred weapon was reputation. She'd spent a lifetime mastering it. On the third day, as I walked home from the bus stop, I felt it. The shift. The neighborhood watch ladies, clustered on their usual bench, fell silent as I approached. Their eyes tracked me like a jury watching a defendant enter the courtroom. One of them, Mrs. Kowalski from the third floor, actually crossed herself. At the entrance, two mothers with strollers saw me coming and veered sharply toward the playground, herding their children away as if I exuded a toxic aura. The building's group chat had exploded. I didn't need to read it. I could feel the weight of it in every averted gaze, every whispered conversation that died as I passed. Linda had done what Linda did best. She'd weaponized her victimhood. Derek was waiting for me in the living room, his phone clutched in his hand like a grenade. His face was blotchy with rage. "You." His voice shook. "You did this." He thrust the screen at me. The chat was a wall of messages, all variations on the same theme. *Emma Grayson is a witch. She cursed her mother-in-law. She's been doing some kind of black magic. Poor Linda is covered in mysterious rashes. Walter Pearson too. What kind of monster attacks the elderly with sorcery? Asterisk. I read Linda's original message, the one that had lit the match. She'd crafted it beautifully, I had to admit. Just enough righteous indignation, just enough quavering vulnerability. Asterisk. I've been suffering in silence, but I can't stay quiet anymore. My daughter-in-law has brought something evil into our home. I don't know what she's been doing in her room, but since she came, nothing has been right. Now I'm sick, and dear Walter downstairs is sick, and I'm afraid, truly afraid, of what she might do next. Asterisk. Are you happy? Derek was screaming now, spit flying. Are you proud of yourself? My mother is being whispered about, our family name is being dragged through the mud, and it's all because of you. Derek. I kept my voice calm, almost bored. You're an educated man. You have a master's degree. Are you seriously telling me you believe in witchcraft? I believe my mother. He grabbed my wrist, his fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. She says you did something, so you did something. Ever since you married into this family, you've been nothing but trouble. You need help. Professional help. He yanked me toward the door. We're going to a psychiatrist. Tonight. We're going to figure out what's wrong with your brain before you destroy us all. I wrenched my arm free. The momentum sent me stumbling back against the couch. The only one who needs a psychiatrist is your mother. Those rashes didn't come from a curse. They came from the peach fuzz on the panties she stole from my laundry. Peach fuzz. He blinked, momentarily derailed. What the hell are you talking about? Ask her. Ask her where she got the itch. Ask her why Walter Pearson has the exact same symptoms in the exact same places. It's almost like they were sharing something. Something intimate. The implication landed. I watched it travel across his face, confusion, then dawning horror, then blind, incandescent fury. Not at his mother. At me, for saying it out loud. You lying bitch. The slap came out of nowhere, a full-force open palm that snapped my head sideways and sent me reeling into the armchair. My vision went white for a moment, then flooded with stars. Pain exploded across my cheekbone, hot and immediate, radiating outward like ripples in a pond. When my vision cleared, Derek was standing over me, his chest heaving, his hands still raised. He looked almost as shocked as I felt. But the shock curdled quickly into self-justification. His jaw tightened. His eyes went hard. You made me do that, he said. I touched my cheek. My fingers came away trembling, but I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't do any of the things he expected. Instead, I smiled. It was a small smile, calm and cold as the surface of a frozen lake. It didn't reach my eyes. Remember this moment, Derek, I said. Remember everything about it. Because one day, very soon, you're going to look back and realize this was the moment you lost everything. He scoffed, but I saw the flicker of unease in his eyes as I walked past him, into the bedroom, and closed the door with a click that was quieter than a slam but infinitely more final. The next week passed in a strange, suspended silence. I moved through the apartment like a ghost, speaking only when necessary, my face a smooth mask of pleasant neutrality. The bruise on my cheek bloomed purple, then yellow, then faded to a faint green shadow. I covered it with concealer and went to work as usual. No one asked. Derek slept in the guest room. Linda stayed locked in hers. The apartment became a mausoleum, each of us entombed in our separate grievances. But I wasn't idle. I was building my case. The following Saturday, I walked into the building management office. The security guard on duty, a heavy-set man named Terry, looked up from his solitaire game and flinched. The rumors had clearly reached him. "Mrs. Chin Grayson," he said carefully, as if my name itself might be cursed. "What can I do for you?" "I lost a set of keys," I said, my voice warm and unthreatening. "They're very important, my office key, a safe deposit key. I think they might have fallen out of my bag somewhere near the garden path. Could I take a look at the security footage?" Relief washed over his face. This, he could handle. No witchcraft, just a lost key. Sure. The monitor room's in the back. I'll show you how to rewind. Take your time. He hovered for a minute, explaining the controls, then retreated to his desk with visible relief. I was alone with the footage. I wasn't looking for keys. I scrolled back to the days before the peach-fuzz incident, my eyes fixed on the grainy black and white feet of the building's side entrance, the one near the garden, the one rarely used by anyone except residents taking shortcuts. 8-speed fast forward. Minute after minute of nothing. Then I saw it. 10:42 p.m. 3 days before the itching began. A figure in a dark cardigan, Linda's favorite, the one with the brass buttons, slipped out the side door, head down, moving fast. She cut across the lawn, avoiding the lit pathways, and vanished into the shadows of the garden pavilion. 90 seconds later, another figure appeared from the opposite direction. Male. Stooped shoulders. Walter Pearson, unmistakable even in the grainy footage. I watched, my breath held, as they converged in the darkness behind the garden shed. The camera angle was poor, I couldn't see what they did there, but 43 minutes passed before they emerged. 43 minutes. And when they did, they were straightening their clothes. I scrolled back further. The same pattern appeared again and again. Late-night rendezvous. Hidden corners. Quick, furtive movements. I captured everything on my phone, the timestamps clear, the faces unmistakable. Ironclad. Indisputable. I drove home in a state of unnerving calm. My hands were steady on the wheel. My mind was clear. The bruise on my cheek had faded, but the memory of Derek's palm against my skin was still fresh, still hot. I carried it with me like a talisman. I was ready. Harold Chen came home that weekend for his bi-weekly visit. He was a warehouse supervisor at a factory 2 hours away, a quiet, beaten-down man who'd spent his entire marriage shrinking himself to make room for Linda's ego. He shuffled through the door in his worn polyester shirt, accepted a cup of tea from his wife, and settled into his armchair with the air of a man who'd long ago surrendered any claim to authority in his own home. But I'd noticed something about Harold over the years. He didn't talk much, but he had a deep, almost pathological obsession with dignity. Saving face. Appearing respectable. Every Lunar New Year, he'd put on his one good blazer and go door to door offering cigarettes to the neighbors, basking in their nods of approval. The opinions of strangers mattered more to him than the happiness of his family. A man like that, confronted with proof of his wife's infidelity, would not weep quietly. He would erupt. That evening, Linda outdid herself with dinner. Braised fish. Sweet and sour ribs. A whole steamed chicken, its skin glazed and glistening. She was performing, trying to soothe some private anxiety with a show of domestic excellence. She fussed over Harold's plate, refilled his tea, laughed too loudly at his few murmured observations. I let the meal unfold. I waited until the dishes were half empty and the conversation had lulled. Then I set down my chopsticks with a delicate clink. Before we finish, I said, there's something I need to share with everyone. Linda's hand jerked. Tea sloshed over the rim of her cup, pooling on the tablecloth. Her eyes darted to my face, and whatever she saw there made her go very still. Not now, Emma. Derek's voice was a warning. Whatever it is, it can wait. It really can't. I pulled out my phone, opened the first video, and set it on the table where everyone could see. The footage was grainy but unmistakable. Linda, in her brass-buttoned cardigan, hurrying through the side door into the darkness. Walter Pearson, stooped and furtive, arriving from the opposite direction. The two of them disappearing behind the garden shed. The timestamp reading 10:42 p.m. Harold put down his spoon. His face, already lined and weathered, seemed to age another decade in the span of a few seconds. What is this? His voice was a rasp. Keep watching. I let the footage roll. The 43 minutes of nothing, the shed, dark and silent, stretched like an accusation. Then the two figures emerging, straightening their clothes, parting ways with quick backward glances. This, I said, is why Mom has those rashes. I turned to Linda, whose face had gone the color of old newspaper. Peach-fuzz, Mom. From the panties you stole off my clothesline. I'd been processing peaches earlier that day, and the panties got soaked in the fuzz. I was going to rewash them, but you took them before I could. I let that sink in for a beat. Then you wore them. And those invisible little fibers burrowed into your skin, causing that rash you've been scratching raw for a week. And the reason Walter Pearson has the exact same rash in the exact same places, I shrugged. Well, I think we can all figure that out. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the refrigerator seemed to hold its breath. Then Harold rose from his chair. He didn't scream. He didn't swear. He just stood there, swaying slightly, his face emptying of all expression. His chest heaved, once, twice, and then he made a sound I'd never heard a human make before. Something between a groan and a sob, dragged up from the deepest pit of his stomach. You, he pointed at Linda, his finger trembling violently. You, disgusting. He never finished the sentence. His face went purple, his eyes rolled back, and he crumpled. Derek lunged to catch him, screaming for someone to call 911, his voice cracking with terror. Linda scrambled backward, knocking over her chair, her hands clamped over her mouth. I called the ambulance. I spoke in calm, measured tones, gave the address, described the symptoms. When the paramedics arrived and loaded Harold onto a stretcher, his blood pressure was 230/120, stroke territory. They said if we'd been even a few minutes later, he might not have made it. As the ambulance doors closed, I caught Linda's eye. She was standing in the doorway of the building, her housecoat flapping in the evening breeze, her face a ruin of smeared makeup and raw terror. She looked, for the first time since I'd known her, old. Brittle. Beaten. I held her gaze for a long moment. Then I turned and walked back inside. The dam broke the next morning. I don't know who started it, maybe one of the paramedics, maybe one of the neighbors who'd heard the commotion. But by noon, everyone in the building knew. The group chat that had condemned me as a witch was now feasting on a far juicier scandal. Linda Chen and Walter Pearson. Did you hear? Caught on security footage. The son had to call an ambulance for the husband. And those rashes, Someone dug up old photos, Linda and Walter at a community potluck, leaning toward each other over the buffet table. Linda and Walter at the Lunar New Year party, standing a little too close. Nothing damning in isolation, but now, with context, every image read like a confession. Walter's children arrived the following day. I watched from my window as his son, a bulky man with a red, furious face, hurled a suitcase onto the curb, followed by a trash bag full of clothes. Walter stumbled out after them, still walking with that grotesque, splayed-leg shuffle, his face a mask of humiliation. His daughter stood on the sidewalk with her arms crossed, projecting her voice so the entire building could hear. 68 years old. 68. And you're sneaking around like a teenager. Mom must be rolling in her grave. By the end of the week, Walter was gone. Packed off to live with his sister in another state, according to the grapevine. A cautionary tale in sensible orthopedic shoes. Linda was less lucky. She had nowhere to go. Derek took her keys. He changed the door code. He disconnected the Wi-Fi, cancelled her phone plan, and swapped her smartphone for a basic flip model that couldn't text or take photos. She was imprisoned in her bedroom with nothing but her shame and her still lingering rash, while the walls of her reputation crumbled around her. I'd hear her sometimes, through the door, weeping or talking to herself in a low, broken murmur. My reputation, my good name, how could this happen? She'd spent her entire life building an image of impeccable dignity. In 1 week, I'd reduced it to rubble. Derek, meanwhile, was flailing. I watched him circle the apartment like a man wandering a minefield. He'd start toward me, stop, turn away. He'd linger in doorways, his mouth opening and closing on words he couldn't seem to form. The arrogance that had propped him up for 34 years had collapsed. Without his mother to tell him what to think, he was utterly lost. One night, I was packing. 3 boxes, neatly taped, sitting at the back of my closet. I'd been packing for weeks, a little at a time, erasing myself from the apartment shelf by shelf. A knock on the bedroom door. Tentative. Almost timid. Emma. Can we talk? I didn't answer. The door creaked open anyway. Derek stood in the doorway, his shoulders hunched, his eyes red-rimmed. He looked smaller than I remembered. Diminished, somehow, as if the past week had deflated him like a punctured balloon. Please. His voice cracked. Just 5 minutes. Please. I leaned against the dresser and crossed my arms. I'm listening. He took a shaky breath. I've been thinking a lot. About everything. About how I treated you. About what I believed. About what I did. He touched his right hand with his left, almost unconsciously. The hand that had slapped me. I was wrong, he said. I was so wrong. About my mom. About you. About everything. I should have believed you. I should have protected you. Instead he choked, tears spilling down his cheeks. I hit you. I hit my wife. I'm so sorry, Emma. I'm so sorry. I didn't move. I didn't soften. I just watched him, this man who'd made my life a year-long exercise in erasure, cry his calculated tears. Please, he whispered. Please don't leave. We can start over. We can move, anywhere you want. A new city, a new house. Just the 2 of us. I'll cut my mom off completely. You'll never have to see her again. I'll be better. I swear to God, I'll be better. He sank to his knees, actually sank to his knees, and clasped his hands in front of him like a supplicant before an altar. Don't divorce me. Everyone's already laughing at us. My dad's in the hospital. If I lose you too, I'll have nothing. I'll be nothing. Please, Emma. Please. And there it was. The truth, finally, naked and ugly. He didn't love me. He never had. He loved what I represented: stability, respectability, a future he could point to as evidence that he was a successful adult. Without me, he was just a middle-aged man living with his disgraced mother, a punchline in the building's group chat. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I walked to the nightstand, pulled out a manila envelope, and set it on the bed between us. "Divorce papers," I said. My lawyer drew them up. "The apartment was my premarital property, I'm keeping it. The joint savings, split down the middle. The car is in your name, but I paid the down payment, you can buy out my share or we sell it. I'm not touching the rest of your money, and I'm not submitting the security footage to the court. As long as you sign." He stared at the envelope like it was a live grenade. "You planned this," he breathed. "You've been planning this all along." "I've been planning my escape," I corrected. "Since the day you chose your mother over me for the 100th time." I paused. "Since the day you hit me." I held out a pen. Signed, Derek. "It's the last easy thing I'm ever going to give you." He wept. Actual, heaving sobs, his shoulders shaking, snot running down his lip. He begged. He bargained. He promised me the moon and stars and a lifetime of changed behavior. I held the pen steady. In the end, he signed. His signature was a jagged, miserable scrawl, but it was legible enough. I tucked the papers back into the envelope, grabbed my suitcase, and walked out of the bedroom for the last time. As I passed Linda's door, I noticed a slip of paper wedged underneath, a note, written in her shaky, old lady handwriting. *Emma, please. Come talk to me. I'm begging you. There's so much I need to explain. Please, from one woman to another. Please, *. I crumpled it and dropped it in the trash. I sold the apartment within 2 weeks. The market was good, and I priced it to move. Standing on the sidewalk, watching the new owners, a young couple, hopeful and oblivious, carry boxes through the front door, I felt nothing. No nostalgia, no regret. Just a clean, empty lightness, like a room after the furniture's been cleared out. I used the money to start over in a new city. I opened a small design studio, just me, a laptop, and a lot of caffeine. The first few months were brutal, 16-hour days, clients who didn't pay, proposals that went nowhere. But every failure, every setback, was still sweeter than a single day in that apartment with Derek and Linda. A year later, the studio had grown to a team of 5. I had a corner office with a window that looked out over a park, and a pothose plant that had grown so aggressively it was climbing the bookshelves. I'd adopted a gray cat with one torn ear and named her Victory. I dated, briefly. It didn't stick. I wasn't ready, maybe, or maybe I'd just learned to be enough for myself. Either way, I was content. More than content. I was free. As for Derek and Linda, I heard fragments through the grapevine. Linda had moved back to her hometown to live with a distant cousin, too humiliated to show her face anywhere she'd once been respected. Derek was still in the city, still single. Someone told me he'd been drinking too much. Someone else said he'd lost his job. I didn't fact-check any of it. One night, scrolling idly, I saw a post from an old neighbor. A photo of the courtyard where Linda used to hold court with her gossip sessions. The benches were empty. Someone had left a single wilted carnation on the seat. I closed the app and went back to my work. There's a special kind of peace that comes from burning your old life to the ground. Not everyone gets to do it. Fewer still have the stomach to strike the match. But when you've been pushed past every reasonable limit, when you've been disbelieved and diminished and struck across the face in your own home, the fire comes easy. I didn't set out to destroy them. I set out to prove I wasn't crazy. The destruction was just collateral. A chain reaction of consequences that they'd set in motion themselves, one stolen pair of panties at a time. I don't think about them anymore, not really. But sometimes, when I'm slicing peaches for a summer pie, I feel the faint prickle of fuzz on my fingers. And I smile.